This week we saw the MK movement transforming into what they are now calling the Patriotic League. And I'll begin with Dr. James Tweheyo, member of the Central Executive Committee of the NRM. Dr. James Tweheyo,
yes.
What is going on? Is this a contradiction within the NRM? How should we actually look at these people?
There is no contradiction at all. Because even within the NRM, there are leagues. There is the Workers' League, which I lead. There is the Elders' League. There is the Women League. So the coming up of a new or additional league maybe could be of necessity of the Patriotic League.
The difference is the other leagues you talked about actually belong to the party structure.
Yes, they do.
And these ones don't. They're actually saying they have come up to deal with issues that you failed to do as a political party.
The government has not failed to do a number of issues. Possibly, it has not reached a certain level. And by the way, some people don't understand the difference between a party and a government. A party is a political entity that elects its leaders, and when the leaders are elected, they hand over now, the party hands over to the formation of government. And literally in Uganda here, government is encompassed by all people, some of who don't even support it, some who don't even subscribe to us. If you look at what happens, you look at the cabinet, for example, cabinet list, how many of those are necessarily NRM people? So once you talk of that, then there would be a contradiction. Yes. So in fact, even members of parliament, all those who are opposition are earning money from government of the Republic of Uganda. So government has some little distinction, only that now the NRM, having got the highest votes, took over the leadership of government, although it didn't change a number of people and a number of things that are within the government. So having this entity now coming up as a league, Patriotic League, putting pressure on the government like any other, like people power used to be, by the way. And to me, people power was not there. Because the power of the people is expressed in the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda. So some of these issues, that's why you see some people, as you say, are from NRM, others are not necessarily from there, and they are coming up to be a critic. I don't want you to say, for example, that Mukunde, by saying from CS Bag that there are things that are not being done right, is not part of the country. He's right to look at them from that lens. So from this very lens, there are some people who are within government, and those who are necessarily outside government, and those who were never in NRM, who are saying, no, there are some things in NRM that are not being done right. And we welcome it, by the way. We are very happy that it's coming up. We welcome it. And we believe it will be a positive critic that will always show us the gaps that are required for us to improve, and we get better, and we tighten our grip on the government and the leadership of this country.
Are we going to get any reaction from the NRM about these people? Because President Yoweri Museveni does not like people who raise such issues in the wrong forum. And
there is no wrong forum being told. There is no wrong forum. Because we have space for anybody in this country to sit down and form either an entity. You can even form a religious grouping. You can even form, So that one of theirs is not a wrong forum. To us, it is a good symbol. That is why politically, even, for example, when NUP started, by then the other political parties, which you may not know, but this one is not, first of all, I want to make it very clear. This one is not a political party. It is not. It is a grouping of people who are saying, no, we should sit down and look at the government and be critical to it, and possibly they could be doing that to help government to close the gaps and improve its performance.
And you agree with them, they have no space to do that inside the NRM?
Space is available, absolutely available. But somebody chooses to do it the own way, at his own volition.
All right. Let's go for a break now. When we return, the other panelists will actually weigh in and tell us what could be going on. What do they think is going on? And some people are actually speculating and saying, before we know it, this group might become a political party and even consider vying for power. But let's go for a break. Spectrum Extra will continue after this break.
Spectrum Extra, Fridays 7 to 9 p.m. on Radio 1 FM 90.
Well, thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Extra, reviewing the major events of the week. The panel, Imam Idi Kasozi, he is a cleric, but he also a lecturer at the Islamic University in Uganda. He's a farmer, and he comes from the Justice Forum Party. We have Mr. Julius Mukunda, Executive Director at CS Bank, Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group, Dr. James Tweheyo, Senior Officer in the Office of the President, Member of the Central Executive Committee, and the Honorable Dr. Mike Kennedy Sebalu, who is the team leader at the Africa Integration Agenda. We're reviewing the major events of the week, and right now we are looking at what could be happening with the launch of the Patriotic League of Uganda, which is coalescing around General Muhoozi Kainerugaba. The name has changed from MK Movement to now the Patriotic League of Uganda. Imam Idi Kasozi.
Yes. It is both heresy for one reason or another, and it may also be unhealthy because of what you have stated here. You said this week, a new political pressure group known as the Patriotic League of Uganda was formed by mainly NRM members who called themselves supporters of General Kainerugaba. That is where the crux of the matter probably would be. And then...
Why there?
General Muhoozi is an army officer who is still serving. And it does not augur very well in the view of what we have had in the past. It may create unnecessary tension in our forces, which we have been thinking are very good. Okay? Because people may be urging to say the Uganda saying, Abana Nebiana, which I think is not really very. The second thing.
Wait, on that particular point, General Edward Katumba Wamala is still a serving military officer and is a minister. General Aronda Nyakairima was a serving military officer and became a minister. So what's the difference there?
You know, of course, we are not happy with it. I think even General Muhoozi is still serving the Deputy Minister of
Internal Affairs.
The way it is done, for them, they are serving maybe inside that, maybe look less. But this one, people are fronting somebody to become head of state. Because that's why they have their terms, standby generator. They started as birthdays, things are keeping on like that. But my problem is, most of the people surrounding this, 99%, they are not free from what we are talking about, that because NRM is not working well, no space, especially including issues on corruption. Many of those people are corrupt, I can say without mincing my words. Those who are leading. And actually, they are fortune hunters. They think when they put Muhoozi in front of them and put his pictures, some of them on their vehicles, they will even violate traffic rules today. That is not healthy for this country. Others have issues, personal issues. Okay? Therefore, just jumping over a bandwagon is not healthy. I would have loved if they were challenging NRM, as you are saying, to come up with ideas which they think NRM, where you think most of them come from, will benefit from. Not just a matter of saying, So that is not healthy. The third thing, I think, it may also, people always, when something happens once, can repeat it. I'm telling you, General Museveni and his team, they went to the bush, they succeeded and won the war. Okay? And they became leaders. Today, whether you want, even if you have soldiers, for them they were 27, even if you start with about 250,000 and you go in the bush, you may not come back because the population that favored them no longer accepts that. Why? The results after the war does not favor them. That is number one. So equally, many people think because Noob came with what they call a wave and many things changed, they think they can do the same. I'm telling you, this country does not need this. It needs some people to go down and say, what do we need if we have to change? If there is corruption, what causes it? If people come with a good idea, they call it PDM. Okay? Do we really need to give people the money? Or we needed to develop some infrastructure that would help these people? For example, if we had used the money for PDM instead of giving to people, to dig canals, carry water supplies so that people can cultivate the whole year and transform their incomes, don't you think it would have been better? I have been asking, because I am in the village. I look around, I am looking, who has gained, who picked the money, and what is it that we shall get out of it? Won't it end up like Bonava Gagawale, Myoga, then there was another, the one of Operation, where is the creation? Okay? Where? So, I think somebody here mentioned, do we really plan? Several is the one who said it. This merging and abandoning and removing some of these agencies we want to do away with. Have we critically thought about them? Or we are going to suffer the consequences of structure adjustment? What was it called? Structure adjustment programs. Because equally, he became a victim of it. Why? Because somebody probably who was retrenching where he was had some vendetta about him, and he threw him away at 22, and he said he was 22. Okay? And he suffered that one. Now, 25 years later, not 25 years, almost 30 years later, he is, when we listen to what he's urging here, he's a think tanker himself.
All right.
I hope he's utilized where he sits on the Central Executive Committee to really appreciate his ideas so that they put them into practice for the better of this country.
Mr. Julius Mukunda, your take on political developments. As an economist, you must really be a keen follower of political developments because at the end of the day, they affect the economics.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you cannot have economics play alone without a politics part. And I always tell people that if there was no budget, you would not see anybody clamoring to be an MP in this country. Everybody would be home. But because there is money involved, everybody runs to do that. And as such for me, is that when I see these pressure groups, call it MK, call it the patriotism, call it the NOB, FDC, we have a political party. I always put across my questions about the economics of the country. What is your fiscal policy? What is your fiscal policy as a party that intends to be in the power? What do you intend to do? Because this country, in terms of economics, we have a challenge that we need to face. For example, one is our budget is not balanced. We have a budget deficit of around 7.2%. We collect 30 trillion, but we are spending 52 trillion. So how do you intend to balance the budget? Because Ugandans didn't understand that.
We are living on a deficit budget.
Because we are living on a deficit budget. I want to hear that because that does make me a choice. Because of that, we have a 96 trillion debt that is hanging on our neck. And the debt has actually reached at 52.7% of our GDP. So, as you are a political pressure group, somewhere a political party, I want you to tell me, do you know what? When I come to power, I will reduce this debt burden from currently 52.7 trillion percent to probably below 10%. Then I know you are disciplined. I want to listen about your taxation policy. Because, Kenneth, the burden of taxation in this country is so heavy. is so heavy. I want you to tell me, how do you intend to expand the taxation base so that each and every person pays their fair share of taxes? What policy are you going to put in place? Are you going to establish a new URA? Are you going to strengthen the current existing one? Is there any new domestic resource mobilization strategy that you're going to put in place to ensure that, for example, that all border districts should be in charge of collecting revenue for the country and share the revenue with the URA so that at least we can improve on that?
This group says one of the things they are going to tackle is corruption. You've been complaining about it.
I mean, okay, good governance and accountability. Tell me how we are going to enforce fiscal discipline. Because right now, we have so many anti-corruption agencies that actually they are duplicating work, but at the same time weakening existing stronger institutions like the DPP. So if you come up and say, as part of my agenda to enforce fiscal discipline, but the fiscal discipline we're talking about is not people just taking money. No, people deciding not to follow the rules. For example, domestic arrears. What are you going to do with accounting officers who decide to commit government contrary to the Public Finance Management Act of committing a government if you know you have no money in the budget and then you incur a domestic arrear? What are you going to do about that? So for me, these are some of the economic challenges, the economic questions that I want these groups to answer to me. Finally, the other part is, are you coming up with a very that you are coming on board to bring to Uganda so that at least we can be able to recover quickly, but save the livelihood, return to profitability, so that businesses don't close? Is there something that you are believing? Because right now we have the PDM, we have the agricultural credit facility, we have the small and medium enterprise funds. Are you bringing something new, or it's just going to be business as usual?
Honorable Mike Sebalo.
Yeah, thank you very much. The debate is interesting and exciting, but we need to look at it from the viewpoint of there is also the element of discipline as we manage some of these public affairs, because NRM is a party. NRM has structures. NRM has platforms. NRM has those opportunities where you can have different political orientations and shades within the party, depending on experience, exposure, and expertise that need to be tapped into. But I think as a party, there are gaps that are creating some of these emerging tendencies.
For instance?
One is the whole idea of creating opportunity for exchanging critical views regarding the direction and the undertakings that we need to make as a country, because there are two things we need to appreciate. We have the party. The party and the members of the party are like shareholders of a company. Then when you have shareholders of a company, they choose management. And the management in this case is the government. Government is working on behalf of the party, which party got the mandate, and that is the real capital, political capital. So the government is operating on the basis of the capital generated by the shareholders who are the members of the party, who went out in the field and mobilized support for the party. Now, where the management is not conforming to best practices and standards that are set by the shareholders, then the shareholders can bring management to book. And that's where cases where you see the management is questioned. How are you dealing with that? You are not making profits. You are not doing this and that. So when it comes like to issues of corruption, within the party still, that can be engaged. And the party can use its influence to override and bring management, which in this case is government, to order. And this should be with cases of corruption that have been proved beyond any reasonable doubt.
Is that even possible in a situation where people say there is a fusion between the party and the government? In other situation, somebody is the government, somebody is the party.
Yeah. Even then, I think it can be
If you
done.
take down the government, you take down the party.
No, what I want to say is that there are individuals within maybe government who may be engaging in practices that don't give a good image of the party in terms of corruption. So when those are good, the party working with the leadership of government should be able to bring them to book.
If I'm getting you clearly, you're saying this group, the Patriotic League of Ugandans, can still operate within the NRM. Is that what you're saying?
That is my view. And my view is that let the party harmonize and allow people with
internal debate
and generate
democracy.
Consensus on the way forward. Because like on the issue of corruption and all other issues that may not be moving well within the party, there is good opportunity for such a debate to be given opportunity and it to be enhanced so that the different viewpoints are brought on the table, and going forward the party can mark a way forward. And that can be competently and done within the party. I think some of these gaps, like for instance, we need a think tank.
Okay.
We need a think tank on different aspects of governance.
All right.
A think tank on economy, think tank on international relations, on industrialization, and we generate well-researched and informed debate that can give that kind of thing.
All right.
So some of these gaps that are prevalent do create vacuum, and people feel that vacuum.
All right, we have some comments coming in, although touching the topic that we had earlier. Mindset change should not only be talking about Museveni and NRM, it should be about national issues. And then Claire writes and says, Kenneth, you're talking about electric vehicles minus roads? That's his point there. Then we have another comment coming from Moses Mukundane, who is listening in from Chira. He says, this is his take. The exorbitant cost of public administration in Uganda is deliberately a governance issue. It's basically a tool for populist politics. And then he adds and says, vote mobilization to maintain the political status quo. The problem is the selfishness of the top leadership presidency of this country. Then two, he says, rolling back the state is the way to go. The classical Thatcherism and Reaganism ideologies are still very relevant to Uganda's economy today. On rationalization, he says, we should start with the huge cost drivers of the public administration: State House, Office of the President, number of members of parliament, number of local governments, but not these small MDAs. That is Moses Mukundane listening in from Chira. Then somebody writes in and says, this PLU thing is the biggest joke of this country. It's just another means of increasing the classified expenditure. What is the difference between it and the NRM? Okay, what's the difference between it and the NRM? That's Robert listening in Kumi. Moses listening in from here in Kampala says, good evening. The new political pressure group says they are going to tackle corruption, but the majority of the members are current ministers and MPs who are the major beneficiaries of corruption. How will they fight corruption when corruption fight will mean fighting themselves? Powerful submission from Mr. Tumukunde. I think he's talking about
Mukunda Julius.
Your other name is Tumukunde. Mukunda. Okay, powerful submission from Mukunda Julius. The biggest problem in Uganda is that we have a lot of politicians who do not understand how governments run and work. NUP, for example, may not understand or even attempt to respond to things like physical reforms and taxation. We need a regional model of governance rather than sending money to the center. That's a comment there from Stan. Well, gentlemen, we are coming to the end of the show, so I'll ask you to give your concluding remarks, and I'll come to you on Mr. Julius Mukunda first.
Quickly is, I think for me, for any pressure group that is coming to take on power, because everybody wants power, is you must have an economic strategy. And to have an economic strategy, you must understand where this country is now and look ahead to see where you want to take it by looking at what other countries are doing. And a few questions you want to ask. How are you going to attract foreign direct investment in this country? Is it because you're going to rely on the house girls and housemaids? By the way, housemaids in 2022 brought in remittances close to 4.2 trillion Ugandan shillings. So is that going to be a strategy that you're going to have more housemaids abroad so that they bring in more money?
But we need to be sustainable.
So you need to think of what kind of foreign investment you want to bring. Second, you want also to say, how am I going to deal with trade balance in this country? Because we import more and we are exporting less. So for us to be able to survive and do better, you need to ensure that you add value additional on our products so that this can have more value. We've been talking about coffee for the last 20 years. Is coffee the only product we sell in this country? No, there are more others. So what are you going to do about that? What about poverty? You have 42.1% in terms of multidimensional poverty that are poor in this country. So what are you going to do to ensure that you increase incomes of people? So these are some of the things that I want to see any political party, anybody, even an MP, to say, I'm coming to Parliament, this is going to be my stake on where I intend to take this particular country. Lastly, on public administration, I think for me the question here we are at is that we need to get back to the drawing table and know which agency, what MDA is delivering for this country. We should not be thinking about the number of agencies and administrators that we need. We should be thinking about the type of service delivery that we need to take. It's not about the number of districts that we need. It's the number of service delivery, schools, water that we need in these particular areas. Thank you.
Dr. James Tweheyo.
It is very clear that His Excellency the President and the party he leads is taking lead in making government reforms. That is why recently there was even a caucus in Entebbe, and the major issue of discussion was how do we work on these other entities and reduce government expenditure. And it is now going to be part of the debate in Parliament, and I'm very sure it is going to work. Actually, what is happening in the Parliament is to make sure they follow the law and see how much they can earn, or rather they can save in rationalization of government programs and the rest. The second issue is when we are planning as a country, it is not a question of putting the planning and other levels to NRM. No. I still insist that people must understand the difference between the government and the party in a government. The party hands over government to those who should manage as the arm of government. And those are the people who should sit down. We can oversee, but sometimes we don't have the ability and the audacity to preside very fully over those who are in the government, whom we have handed over government to, depending on the contracts we made with them. And this is where the problem comes in. If, for example, they say the government which is there should have its own cadres operating, things would be a little different. And possibly that is the one that is giving room to these other pressure groups to come in. And I still insist the appearance and the birth of such pressure groups is good for the country. It is good for NRM as a party. It is good for the leadership because they help us understand. They open the eyes. They help speak for the common man so that those people seated in the office of government should have the fear of what the community fear. They have not, by the way, brought anything new.
All right.
They are talking about, actually what they're talking about is all the elements in the NRM manifesto. Talk of corruption, talk of economic reforms, and some of these have started being tackled.
All right. Imam Idi Kasozi, your closing remarks as we come to the end of Spectrum Extra this week.
I think the first sector was okay. We discussed it, and we are looking forward for our leaders to critically think and see how to get out of some of the 16th century behavior we are still in when we are really in the 21st century. Two, for the second case, we should I see a lot of optimism from some optimistic individuals, and they are saying they are strategizing. Today, where I heard the prayers in Parliament, they introduced an MP, and he belonged to 3 groups. But the time for changing has not come.
Okay.
It was a big contradiction somehow.
Okay.
And much as he wanted to defend it, it was indefendable. The last thing is that as he put it, it is good to have many groups emerging, but when they emerge, it should cut across that if another group which does not subscribe to your ideology emerges, especially if you're in the government, you also let it, give you the freedom to
do what they want.
Exactly.
All
But
right.
the moment you gag others and then let others operate, you are creating a problem.
All right. Honorable Mike Sebalo, in 1 minute, very quickly.
Yeah, the issue of rationalization should be looked at two levels. The level of the leaders and the level of the population.
Okay.
It should be understood, appreciated, and championed by all for it to be meaningful and to be beneficial to the population. Regarding the pressure group within definitely is informed by the fact that there are gaps,
All right.
which gaps need to be filled. So the party needs to respond by engaging or by addressing.
All right. With that, we come to the end of Spectrum Extra for this week's edition. Let me thank you very much, my dear panelists, for making time to be here. Thank you very much, dear listeners, for contributing to this show. Your views help us actually to shape the discussion here in studio. With that, we come to the end of this edition, and I must hand you back over to the other section of broadcasting, where we'll continue with great songs and great memories.
Spectrum Extra on Radio 1 FM 90. An extra hour of analysis and discussion of the topical issues of the week. Brought to you by Housing Finance Bank, a financial institution regulated by Bank of Uganda. Housing Finance Bank, we make it easy.